Good morning, Mike. How you doing?
Happy Monday,
Happy
Steve.
Monday indeed.
It's
Technical
just
difficulties, eh?
another manic Monday, as the
It
Bangles
is.
once said.
That's what they said. I heard that. I heard that. Yeah. So
Yeah, but we're
I
good.
know
Let's
Alex.
get this rolling. I'm anxious to catch you up. How was your weekend?
Weekend was good, man. A lot of downtime, a lot of sleeping, a lot of recovery, a lot of TV watching. But what about yourself? Same things?
Yeah, especially Saturday. I've kind of set aside Saturday as my day to recharge, recuperate, turn the brain off totally as best I can. But I'll tell you, it fills with interesting thoughts when that happens. I think the busyness of the day to day is something that's
Yeah.
keeping me sane. And the weekend had a little bit of a dip in my mood, especially on Saturday. I guess I was maybe on a little social media, picking things up here and there, trying not to, but unavoidable, right? The world in which we operate is coming at us at all angles. So I got a little depressed, a little upset, not terribly, but it was something where there was enough time there to fill that gap. So I had to do a little mind shift, a little adjusting of the mindset, and by today, I'm back. You got the optimistic cup is half filled, Mike P. Even though we're heading into that, what they say is going to be a really difficult couple of weeks, especially up in New York.
Yeah. Was there anything specific, Mike, that sort of triggered, or do you just think because you weren't busy, your mind just was allowed to wander more?
Uh, you know, Maybe we talked at the very beginning, our first live stream together, we talked about grief and that article I
Hmm.
read about what we're feeling is grief. And there are stages of grief, right? There are the stages of denial and bargaining and acceptance eventually. But I think I wasn't in denial. I was in this kind of place these last couple of weeks where my mind was focused on, and you've heard me talk about this, right? I'm looking for some kind of data. I'm looking for uh, someone to give me a vision of what the post quarantine life looks like, the return to work. And we even as recently as Friday, we're talking about some of the polling that my local IFBA chapter did during our happy hour about when do you think we'll get back to the office in mass? When do you think we'll get back to meeting together in public? And when I hear news reports and I looked at data, I did spend some time on that model I shared with you where it incorporates in the hospital availability along with the models projecting the caseload and the death count, all those things. I felt, the the social distancing is working, especially here, like a place like Virginia, where the case count was low, and we went into some pretty extreme measures 3-4 weeks ago. So what that does, though, it flattens the curve, which is the goal, but it also pushes everything out farther and farther, right? So
Yeah.
here it is, this model saying we won't even reach our peak number of cases in Virginia till late May, and
Oh,
maybe get on
wow.
the decline in June and July, and then be down to where it's something manageable in August, where there's very few cases. So that type of thing was hitting my mind, and again, where I was looking for more quick solutions, they're just not there. So that's kind of that acceptance. And you've been ahead of the curve on this for me a long time, because you said Friday you were looking till later than August for a return to some sense of normalcy. But I'm still hopeful. I'm still thinking that there are things that we don't know yet that might come into play. Not a vaccine, but treatments and testing that allows for some type of return. And there was an article, I haven't read it yet, but I've flagged it, that talks about what the post, you know, quarantine world will look like and how we get back to work. And we'll talk about that more, I'm
Hmm.
sure. But that was the mind shift. It's like, okay,
Mm.
let's look at where we are today and what can I do today to make the most of this current situation, not try
Right.
to fix the
Right.
situation and look ahead to the new world so much.
Yeah. No. 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 And it's very important. And there's two things I want to come back to you on. First is a question, other question. And then the second would be something that sort of where my brain has sort of been thinking about as we think about that and the what we spoke about Friday and how long this is going to be a prolonged work from home situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, whenever your mind's going through that, and then you see there's still 8, 9 governors who are not closing down their states. Georgia's state is opening up their beaches. Does How do you feel about that situation in a sense of, what you're going through, what your family's going through, and then there's other people who are taking an approach that seems to go against all the scientific advice and medical advice that the whole nation is receiving?
Yeah, I worry that it's extending this
Yeah,
situation. It's lengthening it because, again, even in a good scenario where we did do the lockdown, like here in Virginia, it's pushing that curve down the road. So now you're going to get me. What do you think? I mean, are you like, just it's inevitable? It's going to be, you know, the fall or next year before we get back to work, or do you think there are things? Have you seen or read anything promising? And here I am falling back into my habit, but I can't help myself. I want to find
yeah,
solutions. I want to see
yeah,
innovation. It's the
yeah,
workplace innovator, Steve. I want to
yeah,
find
yeah,
the innovators in our healthcare system. I know they're out there. I just don't see it reported enough. The the treatments and the testing. I know they're doing trials, they're doing treatments, even vaccines are being developed, but nobody's reporting the status of those things. And maybe it's just too soon, and I'm too impatient. But what do you see? Are you seeing anything that gives you, yes, this is, if nothing changes today, this is what we're looking at, this long-term thing. But if we can do this, that, and the other, then there is possibility of getting an easing back into some type of a world in which we can operate
yeah.
outside of our
And
homes.
to be honest, at this point, I mean, I still have the same opinion I had on Friday. I still always go back to what would I do, right? Because no matter what we do in life, we can only ask other people to do what we would do ourselves, right? We can't ask people to go beyond what we would do. And I sort of, obviously, I've told you my perspective in a sense of, until I know I'm immune or I have the antibodies or whatever it is that allows me to go back into society, how can I expect other people to do the same, right? Do no harm, right? That's sort of a model I think each of us have to sort of take upon ourselves. So I don't really, and as I sort of reconciled in my own head, and I think once you reconcile in your own head, then you're able to move beyond something, right? You're then able to your point, right? You go through the grieving process. You go through a process of what it is to be quarantined, to have this social distancing. I think once you embrace something, you accept something, then you're able to move beyond it, and you adjust the social freedoms we've been used to, and you find other ways to be socially connected. You find other ways to continue to do your stuff, to keep your mind active, to keep your body active, to keep your food still coming in. There's ways we do these things. And I don't know about you, but I was looking at my finances over the weekend and I'm like, I haven't spent a penny, which is a different thing, right? And part of that is a conscious effort to conserve cash, right? And that's sort of
Yeah.
what the other perspective is. But yeah, there's very little that I've seen to sort of change my mind. What I was found interesting though was the narrative seemed to change over the weekend from leaders, right from the government to governors and the mayor, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone seems to be saying, we're coming to an apex, right, and we're going to hit a peak, and it's good in a perspective of that they're seeing almost the light at the end of the tunnel in a sense of we're going to reach this point. But then the other side of it is, well, once we get to that point, it actually stays there for a while, and it does take a while to come down. But again, I think as a nation, I think as individuals, we all want to feel we're getting a benefit for keeping these practices too.
So do you get upset when you see governors not enacting what would be more of a universal approach? Or do you just, again, add that to your reconciliation and accepting the fact that there are certain people out there that aren't going to practice social distancing? There are certain people out there that are going to take a different view on this for whatever reason. And we could fill in those blanks. But do you get yourself upset about that type of thing, or do you just let it kind of be what it is?
I try not to let it get upset with myself because I think, the people who make these decisions, right, they have data that you and I have no access to, right? There's advice that they're getting, and there must be some fundamental reasons or fundamental guidance they're getting that sort of states that it's okay. Um, I think the fact that we're having to talk about it, that it's taken up news air, that there is a potential for other people to get upset and have unrest. Um, there's also the potential that um, if you live in, you take the state of Georgia or South Carolina, whatever it is, right, and you've got Georgia, then it's open the beaches. If you take and I'm sure it's Georgia, and if I'm wrong, I apologize. But again, you've got other states around there where you're going to be impacting. Again, first do no harm, and I just wonder, is there going to be longer term harm from doing that? Because I think everybody can handle a situation for a period of time. Then there becomes a point in time where people just want to get outside. I don't know where you know what it's like in your hometown, but where I live, where I'm out doing my runs, or out walking to get fresh air, the supermarkets are still packed on the weekend.
Mm,
And yes, people are trying to keep their distance. They're wearing masks
right.
and gloves and so on and so forth. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but again, the stores are so busy. But it's the fact that the stores are still so busy and there's still a high risk.
Yeah. Have you been
Um,
wearing a mask? I might as well shift the conversation to
I
that
haven't
because
been
that's
to a
the new
store. I haven't been
guidance.
to a store. Yeah, so I haven't. I haven't been wearing a mask
How are you
when
getting
I'm
your
running.
groceries?
I haven't bought groceries in weeks. So I had myself pretty set up. I've had things delivered, but very
Okay.
little, to be honest.
Wow.
Yeah,
How long
yeah.
can you go? I know you're very cautious, probably more so than most of us. Are you good for another few weeks, another couple
Oh
months? Do
yeah,
you have
yeah, yeah,
really?
yeah,
All right.
yeah, yeah. I've
Well,
plenty of meat in my freezer and plenty of frozen vegetables and so on and so forth. So yeah.
oh, good for you. Good for you. And that's kind of the I respect the other perspectives out there. I think
Hmm.
there are it's a complicated situation, and we have fallen in line. And again, I've struggled with this. I want to defer to the experts. I've said this before on my other live stream that I do with iOffice every Wednesday at noon Eastern. And I say it here is that I'm not trying to make this a political positioning thing. I don't think it should be. I think we're all in this together. But there are in the fog of war, there are different philosophies of how to fight the battle. And I respect different opinions about this dual battle we're fighting. And I've asked this question on my other live stream, and I've asked you it here is which are you more concerned about, the immediate health risks of COVID-19 or the long term and devastating impact of a depression or deep recession. And those are things that we have to balance. And I think some of those other governors, to give them the benefit of the doubt, is that they are trying to balance in their state and their locality the impact of the economy as well as the data around infectious disease and managing those things. So
Yeah.
I again defer to the experts, but someone said, and I don't disagree with them, is that you don't let public health officials make economic policy. Just like you won't let a lawyer decide whether you're going to start a new business. A lawyer
Yeah.
will say, take no risk, don't do it, don't innovate, don't change things, because I look at the world through the legal lens, and you have risk of creating something that might hurt someone or creating something that might become a problem. And that's what his or her advice is that, hey, as a legal practitioner, I have this zero risk kind of view. And that's what the public health folks are saying. We have this idea of do no harm, hurt no one. Well, we can't make decisions in that single spectrum. It's got to be multifaceted and consider the impact of the devastation and death and health consequences, mental health and otherwise, of lost jobs and lost economy. So again, I'm not one to know the answers, and that's why to this point I am a team player, and I'm playing along. But that's why I do continue to kind of demand, when I'm researching and looking for someone with that broader vision that's going to incorporate those things. And I've seen a little of it out there, and the people are starting to think about that. But that's what leadership is, right? It's leadership is looking at the overall picture and all the people affected and all the facets and all the data and all the information we need to, and then make a decision. And it may not be a popular decision, but make a decision and then adjust along the way. And I hope that we could find that type of leadership both locally in our national government as well as our companies, because those decisions are being
Right.
made at corporate levels as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's a tough role. It's a tough decision
Yeah,
to make.
yeah. And obviously we go through these moments where you said you had these low points, and then we come back. And I think everyone can attest, and everyone will go through the same emotions, Mike. One of the things that I try to do is flood my mind with positivities and innovation and ideas and conceptions. So,
Yeah.
you know, when I
Love
was on
that.
your podcast, I did tell you about the book Bold, which was one of my
I
favorites,
remember.
by I actually have it here, for those who want to have a look at it. It's a great book, and I've started going through this again. It's written by Peter Diamandis and Steve Kotler. There's another book that's a little bit different, but it's written by um, one of the key administrators and leaders of Singularity University. It's called Exponential Organizations. So this is
Okay.
all looking at how are things going to change in the future, right? What are the trends that are coming? So how is AR, robotics, AI, how are
Right.
all these going to change everything in the industries? Now, as we look at what we're going through today, will those changes be accelerated because of the opportunities that are in play today? Right? So will VR become more prominent in workplaces because of this, what we're going through, right? So, everyone's enjoying the Zoom experience. You get all the virtual backgrounds, which are all great, but our VR companies will companies look to VR now to create rooms and environments that actually become so we feel like we're in a room together using VR headsets, that amplify the experience. That's just the Zoom network, right? So is there organizations out there doing things like that? So I'm
Yeah.
sort of flooding my mind with these ideas and concepts so that we can see the opportunities, which I find
Interesting.
stimulating the brain and actually did give me a little bit of a lift. So I listened to them on audio. So as I'm on my walks or doing my runs or whatever it is, I can sort of flood the mind with these positive and opportunistic ideas. It sort of helps keep my brain active and sort of
Yeah.
going forward.
No, that's awesome. And that's a great reminder that the things we can control are what we put into our brains, what we think about, what I do on a day-to-day basis. How can I help the people in my
Mm,
community, in my network, navigate these waters? Because I go
yeah.
through the same problems they do. And I assume we're all similar creatures. If I'm having these moments of doubt and frustration and worry because I'm focused too much on those things I can't control, what's it look like in the future? When are we going to be over this? Those things we can't control. If I get back to what I can control, creating great podcasts, creating great content, having conversations like this where people can listen in and agree, disagree, but think about things they may not have thought of before. Those are things that we can really do in the here and now that will positively impact those around us. So I can do my best, control how I behave, follow the CDC recommendations, do my social distancing. Although I'll say my friend Rex Miller, book author, guest on
Hmm.
my podcast as well as my live stream last week, health and well-being is his thing. Physical distancing. Let's call it physical distancing. Health, social distancing implies that we want to stay apart socially, but
Yeah.
what we need to do is stay apart physically, follow those guidelines about not spreading the virus, but socially, let's stay connected. Social, is something we have to have. We have to have these Zoom meetings. We have to have other interactions that are meaningful and provide that fuel for our mental well-being. So let's call it physical distancing,
Yeah, I
not
love that. I
social
love that
distancing.
actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well done, Rex Miller, for throwing that out there. Yeah, no, it is social interaction is so important.
Yep. The other thing that I'm hearing a lot about, and I need to get the link to share, but our friends at the Workplace Evolutionaries are really trying to take advantage of this moment in time, right? With this great work from home experiment, if you want to call it that. And there's always been research around this. There's always been a move towards this, but some have said this is just accelerating the process. Like you said, this is something that now is going to, on the other end of this, is going to have some real long-term implications for corporations, for offices, for people's work schedules, remote work, and so forth. They're doing a survey, and I haven't done it yet. I'm going to take it myself first before I recommend it to everybody. But Kate North and Kate Lister and those folks that run Workplace Evolutionaries are really digging their heels in and taking advantage of this opportunity to analyze what it looks like, how it's going, and how it will go over the next several weeks and months of people working from their home environments and really kind of capturing as much data about it as we can. So they put this survey together that will help kind of, bring that data into a place of usefulness. So I'll take it myself and then I'll share it maybe tomorrow with you or the next couple of days. But I mean, what are your thoughts again on that? Your effectiveness at work continues to to be as uh, are you able to do all you do, or are there certain
Oh, for
aspects of your
sure.
job that you can't do, or you don't need to do anymore? That's my bigger question, I guess, in the world of corporate real estate and facility management. Are there things fundamentally changing about the role? If this is the new normal, and this goes on for let's just say for a year, do you still have enough work to do as a corporate real estate leader if the real estate is not being utilized, or how does that filter through your decision making and your daily consumption of information?
No, it's a great question. And again, I go back to what's fundamentally my responsibility, right? Global head of workplace. My responsibility is to collect information, gain knowledge, and then pass that information up to leaders to better inform so that they can make more informed decisions, then execute on their mandates, right? What are their requirements? So at this moment in time, it's evaluating, okay, what are the different types of work and what does that mean for NASDAQ employees? What does it mean for locations that we operate in? And again, I'm just hesitant. I just heard myself say NASDAQ employees, and I'm like, oh, wait, hold on. This is an open source thing, and it's more. I'm just conscious of. I have to
Yeah,
respect the organization, but I'll tell you my concepts and
sure.
my sort of thinking rather than making it more, directed at the organization. But I think it's an organization needs to go back to your question, right? What things don't we need to do, right? Let's start there. There are many things that we do today that we do not need to do that actually just are time fillers in the sense of it's not results orientated, right? You take an in-person meeting, there's probably 10 minutes of social interaction before you get down to it, which is good. And on Zoom, you probably get that done in like 2 minutes, right? It's a lot quicker. Meetings get a lot more effective direction, and the results come out of it. So
Yeah,
there's things that we can eliminate, and there's things that really we do well. But how do we then ensure that the environment is created for that going forward? But again, going back again, so what information do I provide? How do I take that? I don't think my job per se or a role of global head of workplace would change. It's still the responsibilities. Where we have to be creative is the solutions that we bring to the organization. We have to be creative in the sense that what may have happened previously, whatever had been the culture of work within the organization, um, what how will that change? But a lot of that comes from, and again, I go back to what said on Friday, and I will sound like a broken record at time. It first starts with the workplace, the company culture, the company mandate.
yeah,
What does the company want to do? What do individual businesses within companies want to do? What do individual leaders within an organization want to do? What is their workforce planning to execute that vision? And then how does that then play onto the real estate? So, is there things that we do today that we will not do in the future? For sure. Are there things that we didn't do in the past that we will be doing in the future? For sure.
right.
And it's trying to get those things right. No matter what it is, the first responsibility is to execute whatever the organization requirements are. So hopefully I got an answer
Yeah,
without
no,
trying to get
and
myself
you
in trouble.
spoke to. I apologize. I always put you on the spot,
No,
and
no,
I
no, no.
and I
It's
don't mean to do
I
that.
know, I know you don't mean to do that.
But I love it because your answer indicates to me what is most important are those people, and the people we care for. It's not about the facility itself. It's not about the brick and mortar. It's not even about the tools, the technologies that we need to have in a place of business to make business work. It's without the people, our culture and our organization can't thrive. So
Yeah.
it's
And,
interesting
and
to
so,
see. Yeah,
no, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but it's like you think about the model, right? So today's model and traditional model is you hire everybody goes into the office and everyone has a desk and everyone does their work. Well, what if that workforce model changed, right? What if we went to a 50-50 split between employees and a consulting basis? So you take what you do, you take what I do in whatever form, and the organization says, we don't actually need your time 100% of the time. So what we want to do is take the important functions and tasks that you do, and we do that. But then that allows you, Mike, to then go and provide the same services that you do to 3 organizations, right?
mm,
So each organization who then would hire you as a consultant would probably benefit from what you've learned from other positions, but you would also benefit because you're going to see 3 different organizations, cultures, philosophies, experiences, and you're then going to amplify the benefit you're bringing to these organizations. And then you go, okay, so what other functions could be done, to do that. So you take an accounting function, right? I can speak to it because I've done it in the past. 99.9% of organizations around the world close the books on December 30th. So everyone needs those functions and those people to do those things at that time. But what if half the organizations move their to close their books on the 15th of the month? Could we then split those functions and actually, everyone could then provide those different tasks to different organizations? So, accountant who's performing those tasks for one organization can now do for two. Can organizations now look to reduce and go back to that consultant basis? And I think a lot of organizations will be considering, okay, well, if I don't have an office, I can hire anybody around the world and they can do it from wherever they are, as long as they understand the rules and how we engage. And can then that individual perform those tasks for multiple companies? And will they perform a better task because of the experience and knowledge that they're gathering on a going forward basis? The book Exponential Organizations talks about this sort of structure. What would it take to get us to that? It's seemed a really far off idea a few months ago, but actually
Yeah.
as organizations evaluate talent, how people work, how people spend time, how much of their time and tasks are important that they continue to do that they need to do, and they eliminate things that we don't need to do, will organizations and leaders within organizations sort of take those thoughts, take those concepts, and actually think them through more as this situation evolves? I don't
Is,
know,
is
but
is
again,
that
it's
just
more
an
about
extension? Yeah. I'm sorry. Again, we're going to cut each other off because I just
uh,
have so many thoughts. But is that an extension of the gig economy? When people are talking about the gig economy,
yeah,
they're talking about Uber
yeah,
drivers and people who are contractors. But it's everything. It's in our
yeah,
workplaces. It's on our big organizations as well, right? Everybody
yeah.
just kind of specialized in their expertise and their service, and then they could float from organization to organization. That's a fundamental shift in the old model. But I've heard Kay Sargent and other brilliant workplace strategists talk about this for years. But
Hmm.
you're right. This is putting fuel on the fire and accelerating a lot of the things that were already being experimented with here and there. And this is maybe just going to rapidly advance some of those principles in the post-pandemic world. We may look back and say that was the kind of the catalyst for really significant, disruption and revolutionary change in our workplaces. So,
Yeah.
so to finish your thought, I mean, that where you were kind of saying you've seen these things before, but now it's, a couple months ago, I thought, yeah, that may be a small percentage of a workforce, but now we're talking it may be a really global change in our economy.
This is just it's not so much that I'm saying anything or hearing anything. Again, I just going back and re-listening to these books,
Yeah.
and putting these thoughts from other leaders, other experts back into my head. I mean, this is one of the triggers the why I created Open Source Workplace, because you go back to the crowdsourcing, you go back to that, all that, bring everything together so there is a platform for people to operate collectively. And so it's putting these ideas back into my head, because once I
Yeah.
read Bold, I read Abundance, I read this Exponential Organizations, it scared me as a workplace practitioner. Well, how do I ensure I have value and I continue to add value to whoever I support, be it the organization, be it another organization, because who knows what's going to be like 3, 4, 5 years from now. But how do I ensure I protect and do better for me, Steve Todd, be it wherever it is I work in, and how can I be of service to this industry that we operate in too?
Yeah. I love that. And that's a reminder that we have all this great content. We talked to experts over the past 3 years. For me on the podcast, I have to go back and listen to some of those interviews with a new perspective and a new understanding now that we're in the middle of what we're in the middle of, and really apply some of those principles to this new reality. It's kind
Yeah.
of an exciting thing that you can do now, that we all can do now to prepare for the future. And again, we're always going to resist these certain things. And there's so many people who have said once we get back to some normalcy, people will go back into their old habits because human beings do that. But I'm reminded of, do you remember the movie Big? Did you
Hmm.
watch that? Tom Hanks,
Yeah.
where he
Yeah.
becomes
Yeah.
a grown man. And there's that scene with John Lovitz. So little boy, 13, 14-year-old boy becomes a 30-year-old man, gets a job at a toy company in their data processing department. So Tom Hanks goes in and he sits down. They said, you have to key in this information to the computer. And it's a pretty simple task, but he just sits down because he's so like, just, I'm a boy. And he starts working on it.
Uh,
John Lovitz, his coworker across the cube, is like, hey, hey, dude, pace yourself. Come on, you got to get us all fired. Slow down. So it's like that culture piece, right? Of that
Yeah.
people expect to do, like you said, the 10 minutes of chit chat, and then the hour of coffee, and then go back and do your work. And if those things are important, and we need to find ways to take care of the human experience in the workplace, but I don't want to strip it all away, certainly. But there's a lot of wasted time in our current corporate America. If I just, not naming any company, but just broadly, and I imagine in government too, there's just so many. I always joked about this living in the DC area. When there was a snowstorm or an inch of snow hits the ground, DC becomes gridlocked and nobody can go anywhere. It's like, all right, all federal non-essential government employees stay home because the snow. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of non-essential government employees that what are they doing on a day-to-day basis that we're paying them our tax dollars for? But again,
that's a question for another day.
It's not a political statement, but people are,
Yeah.
I could do, head down hard, work and get things done like in a couple hours that might otherwise take, a whole day, because I get distracted here and there and talking to people. But again, it's got to be a balance, right? We're not looking to strip away all the human interaction. We definitely need
sure.
that. It makes us who we are, and brings us joy. And it's more than just being robots who are the most productive they could possibly be. And I think we need to keep that all in perspective.
No, for sure. And you're absolutely right about reminders, right? And that's the reason why, I try to go back to these things and listen to these things. And the reason why I did it, to be honest, was on the back of my conversation last week with Luke Camperman. And, when I was going through some of my thoughts and asking him, open questions for my day job, there was nothing new he told me that he hadn't said on the interview that I did. And that's whenever I was giving my feedback to you, I sort of said it in a sense of, he reminded me, right? We all need to be reminded. We all
Right.
know what we need to do is. So what are those things that you do daily to remind yourself of those thoughts and ideas? Because it's all in here. We don't forget it. We just need to be reminded to think about it, right? It's
Yeah.
just how we have to consider it. So
Well, that's why we do these daily discussions, and it's a
yeah,
good way
they're
to
good,
kick off
man.
the day and good day to kick off
Yeah.
the week. Good way to do it. So thank you, Steve. It's been
No, thank you,
awesome.
Mike.
See you
Great to
again
see you
tomorrow.
again. All
All
right.
right.
Take care. Cheers.
Bye-bye.